Next item, matters on the adjournment. I'd like, first of all, to welcome Minister Tom Hayes to the House. Very welcome, Minister, and I call on Senator Mary Moran to move for a motion. You have 4 minutes, Senator.
I too, Minister, would like to welcome Minister Hayes and thank him for taking this adjournment debate this evening. Regarding a case of an elderly lady who is living full-time in a nursing home, I've been contacted by her son, who reports that his mother has been billed for €125 for water and for wastewater services for the year in her family home, which, as I said, she doesn't live there, and neither does anybody else, so the house is vacant. After speaking with this lady's family member, I immediately contacted Irish Water for the details around the rules and the regulations of a vacant house. So I received confirmation from them that the owner of a vacant domestic property is liable for a minimum annual charge, irrespective of consumption or vacancy circumstances. And this minimum charge amounts to €62.50 per annum per service provided. So that's where they came up with the figure of €125. And my point is that if the lady was living at home, she had the household package, which she lost when she went into the nursing home. So she would actually, in effect, probably be liable for about €75 when all the allowances and everything are taken into consideration. So actually, in fact, by living out of the house, by being out of the house and not using any water, she has been charged €50 more. Before entering the nursing home to live full-time due to her illness, as I said, she would have received the household package, and it would have entitled her to pay less. So I just find that the whole thing is very, very strange. That why would somebody who's in a vacant house, or who's not, where the house is vacant and nobody is living in the house, so the minimum amount of water would be used, and she's actually been charged more. And I think it's also worthwhile to pay this particular lady, as I'm sure many other people who are in similar situations or who have family members in similar situations, 80% of her pension is actually going to the nursing home. So she's left with only 20% of her pension, plus 22.5% of the value of her house is also going to the government. So, I mean, she seriously, and I think anybody in this particular situation that are out of the home or that are in a nursing home are being seriously penalised, I feel. And I would ask, Minister, and this is why I've brought this up, that something be done about this into the future, and that we look at specific cases. It's one thing if somebody's got a second house and it's there as a holiday home and it is used for a part of the time, but this house is completely vacant, and the only water, as the son reported to me, the only time that there's any water used is the heat come on for an hour a day to keep the house damp free. Another query that was brought up was the use of the PPS number and how long this will be kept on file with Irish Water. If you could give me an answer on that. Irish Water, as from the answer, everything that we've got, we know is a semi-state, and whether there is an issue in regards to data protection if the PPS number will be kept indefinitely. So if the PPS number is to be kept indefinitely, I would be grateful if the Minister and Irish Water would outline the IT precautions being taken to ensure that there is not a breach of data protection. It's highly unusual for semi-state utilities to take a PPS number and hold it indefinitely, and I think that we need to hear clear assurances from Irish Water that people's personal details are safe and protected, as well as why these details are needed to be kept indefinitely, if that is the case. Minister, I am aware and welcome the water support payment of €100 each year for water services to be paid quarterly for individuals in receipt of the household benefits package. But realistically, as I said, a person who no longer resides in their family home due to health reasons, who will not be using any water or wastewater, who is paying 80% of her pension to the nursing home for her care and 22.5% of the value of her house in the Fair Deal scheme, should not be liable for anything except a very minimum charge, which could be attributed to leakages. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Minister Hayes to respond.
First of all, can I thank the Senator for raising this very important issue, and I want to apologise for my colleague, Minister Alan Kelly. He is unavailable to be here to answer what's indeed a very, very important issue, and something that I suppose will lead to further discussions. The Water Service Act of 2000 13 provides that Irish Water is responsible for public water service and can collect charges from its customers in receipt of water services provided by it. The Act also provides that responsibility for the independent economic regulation of the water sector is assigned to the Commission of Energy Regulation, the CER, which has been given statutory responsibility for protecting the interests of customers of Irish Water. The proposed approach to charging was outlined by Irish Water in a water charges plan which is submitted to CER in line with the provisions of the Act. The CER recently held public consultation on this plan, which covered a range of issues relating to water charges and allowances. On the 30th of September 2014, the CER issued a determination of the water charges plan. In making its determination, the water charges plan, the CER had to take account of the decisions made by the government on the funding model for Irish Water and a ministerial direction made under Section 42 of the Water Services No. 2 Act 2013 in July 2014. This policy direction addressed a number of matters related to domestic water charges, including the provision of free allowance of 30,000 litres of water supplied and wastewater treated per annum for a primary residence and the public supply, and a free allowance to cover the normal usage of water services by every child in their primary residence, while customers with specific medical conditions which require increased water consumption will have their charges capped. In its determination on the water charges plan, the CER has approved charges to be levied by Irish Water. These charges outline how much a customer will pay for water services his or her household receives, how unmetered customers will be billed by way of an assessed charge, the rates to be charged for household with a meter installed, and the minimum water charge which will apply to non-primary residents. For a domestic property that is not permanently occupied, the owner of the premises will be required to pay a minimum charge for water supply and for wastewater per service. CER also decided in its determination to make a number of changes to the water charges plan submitted by Irish Water. These included the capping of the total water charges for all customers at the unmetered assessed charges for 9 months. The cap will apply from the start date of the next billing period after installation on a meter on the 1st of October 2014, whichever is the later. In relation to the annual minimum charge for combined water supply and wastewater service at a non-primary residence, the CER have reduced these charges from 160 to 125 per annum, or €62.50 per service per annum. In addition to the above, the Government has agreed to put in place further affordable measures to assist pensioners, persons with disabilities and carers who receive the household benefit package. The conditions and administrative approach to these additional measures are being developed by the Department of Social Protection. In addition, further measures have been announced today as part of the Budget 2015. The establishment of the CER as an independent economic regulator for Irish Water is a clear demonstration of the Government's commitment to ensure that the interests of customers are well represented. The Water Services No. 2 Act of 2013 provides that Irish Water is required to prepare codes of practice and a range of matters relating to the protection of the customer, including standards in relation to the performance by Irish Water of its functions, the provision of information to customers of Irish Water for the purpose of enabling customers to communicate with Irish Water, and billing by Irish Water of persons in respect of water services provided. These codes of practice are now published and available on our website. Can I say, just in relation to the specific question, and it was as a specific case, a person that doesn't use any water because they're in a nursing home. And I think that this is something that I will communicate back to the Minister. Indeed, I'll ask him to communicate it to Irish Water, because the case you may make is a very strong one. But I would think, in general, as somebody who has had a meter on their place for the last 20 years, I would say there's very few instances of houses that have meters that water doesn't be used. That somebody will have access to the house, but if there's no water, and I think that's the case you're making, that if there's actually no drop of water from one end of the year to the other used, then I think they should be looking at that particular case. But there's very, very few cases of that. I was in a local authority in Tipperary. We had water charges there for many, many years, and have them and people pay them. But I think I rarely, if ever, came across a case that there's no water gone through the meter. But in this particular, I'll bring what you said to the attention of the Minister. Second thing, in relation to the PPS, my understanding of the PPS is to allow for the allowances. If they haven't the PPS numbers, that they can't give the water allowances. So, in general, I would say I think there's a lot of fear out there. The communications in relation to this whole issue about Irish water leaves a lot of questions over it. But I would say, as somebody that's using the meter, myself, in our area, and right around the country, people that are using the meter, you have to conserve water. The big problem is, and the big fear with a lot of people, is the amount of water that you use. If you conserve the water, if there's no leaking pipes going into it, your water bills will be very low. And I think a lot of the fear that's out there is the worry of the huge amount of water and if there's leakage. And really, in urban Ireland in particular, I would say that there's very, very little leakage, because you can see it, it's in your lawn in front, or if it's in the house, it will come through the floors of the. It's very easy to recognise it. Where in country Ireland, people that own farms and land can be under a ditch or roadways or some other way. So it's often very difficult to detect it. But can I say, in relation to this particular individual, and that no water is being used, I think there is a very good case to be made, and I certainly will pass that back to the Minister and ask him to do it.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his response, and I would appreciate if you would bring it back, because I know the house in question and I know the person involved, and I can assure you that it is indeed a most genuine, and I do take your point on board that there might be few and far cases where this is actually, where this actually occurs. But it still does happen, and I've no doubt that it does happen, and that she's not the only person where it is happening. And I just think that the whole thing, when you look at it, that if she was at home with her allowances, she would be charged less than she's been charged at the moment, which I think is just ridiculous, basically. So I would ask that something be done for people in this circumstances. That would be great. And the other question, just briefly, about the PPS number. It's not that I'm asking about the PPS, and this person that has come to me with the query has no problem giving his PPS number. But what his question is how long will Irish Water hold his details for data protection?
They would hold it as long as they would be given the allowance, which is obviously every year when they calculate how much free water you have. So you'd want to know. I would imagine. I don't know that. I'd say they have to keep it. That'd be my understanding.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Minister.